of these things that we're talking about here, the scenario stuff, we have gone through what's doing there, but don't worry about it because he's recorded it and you can hear it. So all I'm pointing out in the scenario is stuff to think about, which is on his recording. Okay, so in activity 1 with the presentation, this is the second part of the presentation that you need to be thinking about, and it says in here, a discussion of the potential security impact of incorrect configuration of firewall and third party. We just talked about that, what that means. A discussion using a specific example from either your research of how implementing each of the following can improve network security. So a DMZ is a space in the network.
North Korea and South Korea.
No. It is a space in the network that is between internet and your internal environment.
Was that by the firewall?
The firewall may border both sides of the DMZ.
So what would be in the middle normally?
So you might have a switch and servers that have content served to the internet.
Wait, hang on.
So I'm going to draw it. I'll just draw it here. Let me just draw it here.
Not that bit. Not that bit. I don't think that's
No, that
Yeah,
is-
it is. Is it?
Don't do what Chris did.
No, you can- no, you
can see it's already been
server.
wrong.
I can't.
At the moment, this is, I'm going to make this a VPN server, right? VPN server.
Is this kind of like what I did where I had 2 firewalls?
This is the network. Well, sort of. Here's the network in front of that. So the VPN server's got 2 interfaces on it, right? It connects to both. 1, 2. In this direction, we have the internet, and the likelihood is you have a firewall here. This has got the internal network on it, and the likelihood is you have a firewall there, internal network. Now, I have made this with 2 separate devices. You can do it with 1 device. It doesn't have to be 2 devices. Cyber Essentials, not Cyber Essentials, sorry. There are some anti-patterns by the government that says use 1 firewall, manage it very well, rather than 2 firewalls that you manage badly. Okay, but if you're a good company that knows what they're doing, you'll probably use 2 firewalls. Sometimes these will be separate vendors.
2. But 4.
Sorry?
2 is working. How about 4?
Well, you might have 4 if you do that, as in high availability. Right, anyway, so when someone's serving something from the internet, if they want to get to some files that you're serving from here, there might be, a server that might sit up here in the DMZ, might be sat in the DMZ, but it's firewalled, they can access that server to get some files, or it might be that it's a Citrix server so they can get to a protected Windows client or something like that, where they can get into here. This server itself has the files on it, and it's allowed to talk to some things in there, but not many things. If anything, sometimes you're just pushing files to that, and people come in and get them. That server can't otherwise do anything else, okay? But the control of the traffic is determined by this.
So that's like.
So control of the traffic is controlled by the firewalls as to what can happen. So in a DMZ, it's a protected environment. It protects the inside from what's in the DMZ. It protects what is in the inside from the internet as well.
Oh, okay.
So if anything's coming in from the internet, it must traverse the DMZ first to get to something or to go into the network. Yes.
Is that so like with with my network where I've got 2 firewalls, can I technically make have the DNS be the DMZ be between those 2 firewalls,
Yes.
so data going through would go straight through to that other firewall?
Yeah. The DMZ is also a place in the network where you may put the following functions. IPS, which is intrusion prevention systems, or IDS, which is intrusion detection systems. The only difference between them is prevention will stop traffic, detection just alerts on traffic. By traffic, that means stuff that is considered to be bad. So that's how
Ideally you want both, so you get notified, but it'll also try
Oh,
to
I thought it was glue or something.
The other thing you could also have in this area of the network is something called SSL decryption.
A bit of SSL encryption.
And that is used to make sure that nobody is tunneling data through your network that you don't know about.
So with the DMZ, the end of like the network.
It's the gap between you and the internet.
So that's where the VPN would go.
Yeah, so VPN will cut you. So a user at home, here it is at home on his little PC. He's got his VPN client on. His VPN client will come in. It'll hit that guy there, get decrypted. He pops out into the network and goes then via that firewall to get to services.
Okay.
So when they're talking about in the scenario about teachers were able to RDP to something, this was in place, they wouldn't be able to, because you put a rule in that says, well, if you're working from home, you can't RDP to server.
So it's pretty much a border. You've got the first border you go through, which is the English border. Then you go through the channel and get to the French border. Like, sorry, we're not having it.
Yes, very similar analogy. Yeah. So that is a DMZ.
So,
Okay.
so if we're going off that, so say for example the UK's internal border, like illegal traffic would be like the migrants trying to cross the border.
Yeah, I
so
suppose
the
you
French,
could say
so
that.
they've gone through the first firewall, so the French have let them go through,
The first one.
and then they hit the second firewall, which is the UK, and then
Yeah, 'cause that
You hit the second time.
That stronger policies on it, or it just drops the traffic, in which case it's single.
I mean, I guess the stronger
Right, so-
policies have been declined for the
Yeah.
internal firewall.
Okay, so that's a DMZ. So let's talk about static IP address then. So static IP is about you're facing the internet. If you are serving services on in your DMZ that people are getting to, like your VPN server, you do not want your VPN server facing out into the world using a dynamic address. A dynamic address is one that changes.
Which is what you normally you get provided
Which what
by
you get.
your IT.
So yeah, all of us at home generally, unless
I
you
have
pay
static.
for it, unless you pay for static, it comes
got
with
it
your
for free.
package, or if it comes with your package, you would have a dynamic address. That means if your router reboots for
Okay,
some
you've
reason,
got a
or if your firewall rebooted,
Pickleball.
your address could change. That could be very bad for people.
Well, you could set up a dynamic DNS.
Well, yes, but we're talking about doing it properly. So if we have a static address, we get a static address assigned to things, and they all point, whatever those different services are, they all point to our firewall. The static addresses, the real addresses on the internet point to the firewall. The firewall runs something called network address translation, and that takes the internet address and translates it to the DMZ address.
That's what that means.
Okay, yeah, network
Oh,
address translation.
What was it when we were talking about say for example, we're talking about having multiple public like IP addresses that would link to internal.
Yes, you can do that.
What
That's
was that
still
called
double
again?
net.
Double net.
Well, it's not double net necessarily. It can be static net, dynamic net, PAT. There's quite a few different ways of doing net. But if it was one-to-one, static net is what you'd be using. So one-to-one. So if he's got an internal address of, I don't know, 10 dot something, your external address might be 80 dot something. You have a one-to-one relationship between your 80 dot something and that device there. If you've only got very few static addresses, because they've only given you very few and the world is running out of static addresses available for companies to use, you use ways of splitting up that address based on what someone is trying to get to by taking the ports and pushing it to different servers.
What if you had multiple servers on the same port? Would you need multiple?
You need a load balancer.
Load balancer. From load balancers, they basically handle the request, or
They'll
do they
take the
pass?
request that comes in, check which server is the most busy, or least busy rather, and send it on.
But
Depends,
it
really
can
depends.
also identify different
Yeah.
like domains. If you have different domains and different servers,
Yes.
it's
Oh yeah. So that's static IP, and that is NAT. NAT is about hiding your internal network from the external network, and it allows you to host services, usually in a DMZ, using static IPs. You want static IPs so that things don't change. If things change, services might stop working. Right. A proposal for a method to assess and treat IT security risks. That right there is going to be some sort of what we call penetration testing. Okay? You should know all about that.
My dream job.
So penetration testing is you're either going to speak to a third party, or you're going to hire, or you're going to do this yourself, but you might get some specialised software that effectively you get something that sits on the network, scans everything, and then gives you a report as to what's wrong with everything, and then you work out what you're going to do.
So you
based
just
on
have to
that
explain
report.
how you would do it.
Yes.
Without doing it.
In Appendix 2, which gets mentioned in Activity 2, they have a list of risks and how they got. They do not explain how they got to any of those risk levels, what they consider to be important or not important. They just decided, right? So you would say actually the output of a penetration test would lead you to understand what your risks really are to help you score such a thing better. Okay?
With real world experience.
Yes.
From the test you
From
have.
the test, yeah, because you could test the web server and find that loads of stuff is open and it's shutting down or it's not patched or whatever.
And then you can actually find more if you do a presentation test on. But when you say presentation testing, it's not just hacking some company system, it's actually infiltrating their building as well.
Well,
That's a part
you
of
can
it.
put that
Well,
into it.
We
if
can
you feel
talk
that's
into it because they
necessary.
talk about how
Yeah.
they don't lock to certain rooms.
Yes.
So that's also.
So you put that in there. This one here, an evaluation of the range of countermeasures that can be employed to make sure that an organisation's integrity is not compromised. That is about making sure people cannot get to your data, and if they can get to your data, that they can't alter your data. So you need to have a think about, well, how am I going to stop people getting to the data? Well, that's firewalls and stuff. If they can get to the data, how do I stop them changing the data? That needs to be around role-based provisioning and that sort of thing around what they can access, what they can't access, what they have the rights to do. Okay? Organisation integrity could be either data security or operational continuance. Make sure that you include both physical and virtual security countermeasures. Now, from that, you need to probably Google them to research basically the terms and what they apply to. I think from what I remember when I was having a look at this, and it says about physical and virtual security countermeasures. That's about services that are in the cloud that you might use to help you. Physical would be, or it might be virtual could also be logical stuff like antivirus software, etc. So it's not physical. Physical could be the locks on the rooms and people not being allowed to get in unless they are properly badged on lists and stuff like that. Okay.
It's like with these, you can have different types of them.
Yes.
So you can grant people access with it, but there is a big problem with that, and it's something I would love to do. Is you can get an implant in your hand that it's basically, you know, like what you put in dogs' neck, like dogs
Yeah,
track 'em. You can get something like that in your hand, and you can clone it to be like something like this. And the problem with that is people have done it before at events and that, where they've walked around with a green badge and got into a restricted area, which is a red badge, and it was like, oh sorry, I was granted access through my badge, but it was their hand that granted them access technically. And then
They
stuck.
basically put their hand between the card and the reader, so it looks like the card's accepting it, but it's actually
on camera, so that's a no. It's a bit too complicated to go into, but
Well, that's not. That's
On
get
there,
on with
yeah.
it. Okay.
Itself, because I remember, I think, what was it, last year I was able to use my year 1 badge, and then this year I've been able to use my year 2 badge. But obviously we're now on year 3, so you'd think they've disabled them from the previous years, but they don't.
but you would have the same access
That's
code.
because funnily enough, even Neil admitted to me that all the cards are the exact same.
Yeah.
So if you clone one card, it doesn't matter. They can't shut off that card, that one specific card. They basically set the ID the exact same on every single card. Massive security risk.
It is, absolutely. Right, number 2 then. Process review. So this is the current risk assessment procedures in Walgrave College, Appendix 2. A review of them. And as I was sort of saying before, how did they get to those values? You need to go through that in a bit of detail and do a little bit of research on those bits and pieces up above to come up with a review. An explanation of data protection processes and regulations. So based on the scenario, what data protection processes are they following and what regulations should apply? So by regulations, that's probably things like GDPR and what have you with regards to the data that they have and what they lost. So you need to have a think about those things and what they should or shouldn't be doing. A summary of an appropriate risk management strategy or applied ISO standard, which is what you were talking about earlier, the ISO standard. So really you're going to say that your risk management strategy is not very good, you want to probably do it like this. Okay. An analysis of the possible impact on security following the results of an IT security audit, which again, go back to the scenario where they mentioned later on they've had an audit and say, right, well actually they followed this, and this, they could make things better, things could be improved, etc. And a recommendation with supported reasons on how it could be aligned with its organisational policy. So reasonably straightforward, it's just a bit of writing and a bit of research, okay?
Honestly, this is the most interesting unit out of all of them.
Present a written report
And
on the
the
design of a suitable security policy based on the supplied evidence and operational requirements. So that is you writing a security policy for them. For example, that could be passwords. Use a laptop unless it's got a VPN on it. You can't take stuff offsite. You can do this. If you're going to host data, it needs to be hosted here. It needs to be encrypted. It needs to be this. It needs to be that. That's what you need to sort of do a bit of research on. A disaster recovery plan. So when they lost all their data, how would they get their data back? They said they had to buy a new IT system. That's a load of rubbish. They should be having some sort of backup. The backup they had was on some terrible NAS drive,
Or they should have a backup server in a different facility.
or in the cloud, or wherever. But absolutely.
One.
So that's what needs to go into this. All their systems need to be backed up, and they should be backed up based on what that platform supports, whatever that might be.
The only reason why you wouldn't have it in the same building is if
Yeah.
one of them gets corrupted in that building, the other one will
That's what
be
we
fine.
So-
that's what I want to see isolated.
You need to look up, you're going to need to research what identification and discussion of stakeholders and their roles in implementing a security audit. So that is going to be basically your senior leadership team, it might be your IT staff, it might also be some of your teachers, but basically what would their job be to do a security audit? So if it's the SLT, they're going to be the sponsors of the security audit, the IT team are going to be the facilitators of such an audit, and then you're going to have a third party that's going to come in, that's going to actually do the audit, and then you're going to need to decide on who is going to be responsible for the review
What is an
afterwards.
audit?
An audit is like a penetration test, really, is what we're saying. Someone's going to come in, look at everything you do, procedures, processes, technology, pen test potentially, and review it all, and then say, right, here's the report, this is what I found, this is what you should do.
Okay.
Justifications with reasons for the design security plan, including selected physical, virtual and policy elements. So that comes down to, you're going to do better with firewalls, I'm going to do this with my server hosts, I'm going to store data in these places. Yeah, there you go. So that's an audit if you're doing a financial audit. So if you say,
Oh yeah, mate.
look
It's
up,
still looking at official inspection.
look up the
like-
word IT audit, it sounds a bit more, that might be a bit more useful to you. Yeah, there you go. Investigation, evaluation, IT systems, infrastructure, policies and operations,
Okay.
which is what we've just been talking about, right? So it's straightforward. An evaluation of the suitability of the tools used in the security policy designed for war grade college on how it meets their needs. So you probably have to have a look at what was being suggested for them and how they could be improved or whether they're the right sort of thing. Support any points you make in the report and presentation with well-chosen examples from any research you carried out. So I can't remember, although it'll show up on here, won't it, what the where we need to be in terms of or is it? Yeah. So discuss the types of security risks of the organisation. Tick, easy done. Assess organisational security procedures. Again, tick.
That
None
would
of them
be-
look really good. Fairly easy to have a look at.
That's
and
basically the
say,
same as P1 though, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Carry on. Just expand a
Yeah,
little
see,
bit more.
they're all linked, aren't they?
Discuss the potential impact of IT security of incorrect configuration, firewall policies, and third-party VPNs. Tick, easy
We'll talk
done.
about that when
And that's
we-
all in the presentation of the first few sections. Yeah.
And P4's presentation.
Discuss using example for each, how implementing a DMZ, static IP, and NAT can improve the network. Bang, we just talked about that. One of you videoed it, right? So that's easy done, right? Nice, straightforward stuff. Let's go to here. Oh, review risk assessment procedures in the organisation. We talked about that. That's how they got to them and whether or not they.
That's the
appropriate.
audit.
That's the audit stuff. Explain data protection processes and regulations as applicable. So that's where you're going to have to do a bit of research on GDPR and the ISO stuff and how it applies to them. Okay.
That's quite
You
good.
might need to reach out possibly to Debbie or Judith on that. A bit more. That one, because they'll know. That I think Judith teaches some of those policies, and they'll know.
We've done it in the T level with data protection and all.
It's misuse and stuff.
I would lean on that if you can. And then here, design a suitable security policy for an organisation, including the main components of a disaster recovery plan. So if all goes wrong, how do we keep running?
Is that the presentation or is that the?
No,
That's the last one.
report.
That's the report. That's
Oh,
one
okay,
of
that's
the
not too
reports.
bad then for a report.
Yeah, because it's only a security policy.
Discuss the roles of the stakeholders in the organisation and what their role is. Again, should be straightforward
I
enough.
just thought for P7 we can bullet point that then.
Yeah.
If it's a policy we're creating
Remember
for
it.
someone, we
You
can
can
then.
probably Google a security policy and then apply it to them and see, right, yeah, they can use this, they can use this, they can use this.
And just
Yeah.
reference what
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can ask Neil what they use.
And that is that for
Yeah,
section
but
5. So it's a lot of writing, but it's not difficult.
hard, no.
Yeah.
It's easier than some of the other.
As long as you can waffle on.